Hello students, welcome to our online classes. I am Mrs. Meghampuri and today we are going to learn History's chapter number 3, the Delhi Sultans Part 2. Part 1st we have already learnt in the last session. Now let's quickly revise the points which we learnt in the last session. The rulers of Delhi, finding out about the Delhi Sultans, the circle of justice, what Mini Siraj taught about Razia, from garrison town to empire, the expansion of Delhi Sultanate. These were the points which we learnt in the last session. Now, let's begin our today's session with this beautiful mosque image. Okay, now Quwat al-Islam Mosque and the minaret built during the last decade of the 12th century. This mosque was built during the last decade of the 12th century. Now, who built this mosque? The Delhi Sultans built this mosque. Okay, this was a congregational mosque of the first city built by the Delhi Sultans, described as a chronicles as Delhi il Khuna, that is the old city. The mosque was enlarged. The mosque was enlarged by whom? The Iltutmish and Alauddin Khilji. The mosque was again expanded. It was enlarged by Iltutmish and Alauddin Khilji. The minars, see, these are the minars. Okay, the minars was built by two sultans, that is Kutubuddin Aibak and Iltutmish. Who built the minars? Kutubuddin Aibak and Iltutmish. Now, next, the masjid. What is the masjid? The mosque is called a masjid in Arabic. Mosque is called masjid in Arabic. Literally, a place where Muslim prostrates in reverence to Allah. In congregational mosque, that is Masjid Izami or Zama Masjid, Muslims read their prayers, that is namaz. Muslims' prayer is called as namaz. They pray together, right? The members of the congregation choose the most respected learned men as their leader. Members, what they do? They choose a most respected and a learned person who is most intelligent amongst them, and he is called as Imam, and he performs all the rituals of the prayer. He also delivers the sermon, that is khutbah, during the Friday prayers. Okay, that means he advises the people during the Friday prayer. During prayer, Muslims stand facing Makkah. In India, this is to the west. Whenever the Muslim prays, they stand facing towards the Makkah. Okay, Makkah is a holy place of Muslims. So they always pray. They always pray facing towards the west. Okay, and this is called as a Qibla. This is again a picture of another mosque, Meghampuri Mosque. This is a Meghampuri Mosque built in the reign of Muhammad Tughlaq, was the main mosque of Jahanpana, the century of the world. His new capital in Delhi. This was built by the Muhammad Tughlaq. Okay, and it's known as a Meghampuri Mosque. Now, the Delhi Sultan built several mosques. It's very important. Delhi Sultans, they used to build several large number of mosques were built all over the subcontinent. This demonstrate their claims to be protectors of Islam and the Muslims. Why they built several mosques? So that they could convey a message that they are the protectors of Islam and Muslims. Mosque also helped to create the sense of community of believers. Because of that, people started believing, they started coming together for prayers, and it created a sense of community in the believers. Okay, who shared a belief system and a code of conduct. This was necessary to reinforce the idea. Why it was necessary? Because Muslims came from the variety of different background. They belong to the different background. So it was necessary that different large number of mosques should be built so that all Muslims can come together. Fine. Next, slaves rather than sons. Sultans were advised. Now, what sultans were advised? You know, the people who used to write the chronicles were Tariq or Tariq. So, what they used to advise to the sultans, let us see. A slave whom one has brought up and promoted must be looked after his needs a whole lifetime, and a good luck to find a worthy and experienced slave. See, a wise men have said that a worthy and experienced slave is better than a son. They used to advise the sultan that a slave to whom we bring up for the whole lifetime, it takes a good luck that we get a trustworthy and an experienced slave. And if we get such a person, then that slave which is trusty and experienced, which we can trust blindly, he is better than your son. So this was the advice given by the chroniclers. Okay. Now see, the Khiljis and Tughlaqs continued to use Bandangan and also raised people of humble birth, who were often their clients, to the high political positions. They were appointed as generals and governors. However, these also introduced an element of political instabilities. Now, the slaves were given the higher political positions, such as generals and governors, and this brought political instability. Now, let us see why they were given. Slaves and clients were loyal to their masters. This was the very important point. Because they were very loyal to their masters, they were given the high political positions, such as governors and generals, okay, and patrons. But not to their heirs. This was again a very important point. They were loyal to their masters, but they were not loyal to their sons. Okay, they are not loyal to their heirs. Now, new sultans had their own servant. When their son became an sultan, he again had his own slave and his own servant. So, as a result, what happened? The accession of new monarchs often saw a conflict. There was a difference between old and the new nobility. So, there was again a fight between old people and new people. The patronage of these humble people by the Delhi sultans also shocked many elites, and the authors of Persian Tariq criticized the Delhi sultans for appointing a low and base born to the high offices. This again created a huge problem and instability, political instability in the kingdom, and this was criticized, means it was not accepted by the people. And the Persian Tariq criticized the Delhi Sultans. Why he criticized the Delhi Sultan? Tariq means who writes a chronicler, right? He has criticized Delhi Sultans because for appointing a low and a base born of high offices. That means he is not capable to be at the high position. Then too he was given the high position, and this has created a conflict in the kingdom. So he was criticized. Who? The Khilji and the Tughlaq. Sultan Muhammad Tughlaq appointed, see how crazy these two people were. Sultan Muhammad Tughlaq, what he did? He appointed Aziz Khummar, and he was a wine distiller. Okay, he used to give wine to the Sultan, right? Firuz Hazam, he was a barber. Again, a Manka Tabbak, a cook, and two gardeners, Ladha and Pira, to high administrative post. Means a wine distiller, a barber, a cook, gardeners. These are the common people who work, and they were given a very high administrative post in the kingdom. They didn't have any experience of it. Then also they were provided with this post. So what happened? Ziauddin Barani, a mid-14th century chronicler, reported their appointment as a sign of Sultan's loss of political judgment and his incapacity to rule. And this has indicated that the Sultan was not capable of ruling, and he was not capable of political judgment. Okay. Like the earlier sultans, Khilji and the Tughlaq monarchs appointed military commanders as governors of territories of varying size. These lands were called Iqta, and their holders were called Iqtadar or Mukti. Not only the slaves but also the military commanders were given a particular territory of different sizes, and that territory or that land was called as Iqta. And Iqta, the holder of the land who used to rule on that territory, he was called as Iqtadar or Mukti, right? The duty of the Mukti, what was the duty of that military commander? He was ruling on that particular size or particular land, right? And that land was called as Iqta, and the owner of the land was Iqtadar or Mukti. Now, what is the duty of Mukti? The duty of the Mukti was to lead military campaigns and maintain law and order in their Iqtas. What was their duty? To lead military campaigns and maintain law and order. In exchange for their military services, the Muktis collected the revenue of their assignments as a salary. They also paid their soldiers from these revenues. Control over Muktis was most effective if the office was not inheritable and if they were assigned Iktis for the short period of time before being shifted. These harsh conditions of service were rigorously imposed during the reign of Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad Tughlaq. Now what happened? They were appointed for a very short period. Okay, they were not appointed for a longer period. So and this was done by Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad Tughlaq. Also, accountants were appointed so that they can give a check that how much revenue is collected, how much revenue is being used, are they cheating the sultan. This all work was done properly. Okay, so accountants were appointed by the state to check the amount of revenue collected by the muktis. Care was taken that the mukti collected only the taxes prescribed by the states and that he kept the required number of soldiers. These all care was taken by the kings, that is the sultans. Next, as the Delhi Sultans brought the hinterland to the cities under their control, they forced the land chieftains, a Samanta aristocrats, and the rich landlord to accept their authority. Under Alauddin Khilji, the state brought the assessment and collection of land revenue under its own control. The rights of the local chieftains to levy taxes were cancelled and they were forced to pay taxes. The Sultan administrators measured the land and kept careful accounts. Some of the old chieftains and the lords served the Sultanate as revenue collectors and assessors. There were three types of taxes on cultivation called khiraj and the amount to about 50% of the peasants' produce, on the cattle and on houses. So there were three types of taxes which were implemented by the Delhi Sultan, such as Alauddin Khilji, and the cultivation. 50% of the cultivation was given as a revenue, so that was called as a kharaj. And the second one was on cattle. How many cattle are there? On that basis the taxes were implemented, and also on the houses. Okay. It is important to remember that the large part of the subcontinent remained outside the control of the Delhi Sultan. It was difficult to control distinct provinces like Bengal from Delhi, and soon after annexing southern India, the entire region became independent. Even in the Gangetic plain, there were forest areas that Sultan forces could not penetrate. Look, see now, very important, it was very difficult to rule over the whole entire kingdom, right? What happened? It was difficult because to control the distinct provinces like Bengal from Delhi. Now imagine the distance between Bengal and Delhi. So kings were finding it very difficult to rule over the control and control all the administration in the kingdom. Local chieftains established their rule, and because of this, what happened? Local chieftains started establishing their rule in these regions. Sometimes rulers like Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad Tughlaq could force their control in these areas, but only for the shorter duration. Because of this, what happened? As the kings were incapable of ruling all over the country, there were local rulers started ruling. They said that we are the king of this specific area. Smaller kingdoms started being established. But what happened? Sometimes Alauddin Khilji, Muhammad Tughlaq could force their control. They could say that no, that we are sultan, so you have to follow us. But that was only for the shorter period. Why it happened? Because it was very difficult for the sultans to control and administer such a vast empire. Okay.